Hello viewers! This computer right next to me was manufactured in 1995 and originally shipped with Windows 3.1. A few years ago I picked this machine up along with a bunch of AOL CDs, which makes me assume that it was used to access the internet back in the days. Since that computer came into my possession, it's been decorated with PayPay stickers and received some hardware upgrades. The board is packed with a 66 MHz 486 CPU and 8 MB of RAM. I've replaced the spinning disk hard drive with a CF card reader and installed an ISA network card. Since the entire Western world is surrounded by Wi-Fi signals, getting on the internet has never been easier. And there is no reason not to make use of that on such an old computer. In this video, I will basically take a Raspberry Pi and turn its wireless connection into a wired connection the ISA network card can make use of. I will also set the Pi up to act as a network drive that allows me to share files between my main machine and the 486 when running Windows 95 or plain MS-DOS as well. Time for the intro. If you want to do anything internet related on old x86 hardware, there are basically 3 pieces of software you can use. Well, it's probably a bit more than 3, but when considering real-world usability, there are basically 3. The first one is mTCP. It's basically a collection of TCP/IP applications for MS-DOS and is still being maintained up to this day. It includes clients for various protocols such as Telnet, FTP, IRC or plain HTTP. The second one is Microsoft's very own network client for MS-DOS. It's quite a buggy mess from a 2021 viewpoint, but it allows you to mount network drives. You know, like when connecting to a NAS or home server on Windows Explorer and accessing the files under a dedicated drive ladder. And then we have a third option called Windows 95. Most of the tools and drivers you will need already come with the CD. Despite the fact that Windows 95 has a real mode MS-DOS mode, I've installed each OS on its own memory card. When I tried to install that Microsoft network client on Windows 95 instead of a pure MS-DOS, it turned my system into an unbootable blue screening mess. But before taking care of that, I'm gonna take care of the Raspberry Pi. In my case, it's a Model 3B+. In most cases, the OS of my choice would be the newest Raspberry Pi OS, but for this specific use case, there's a script available that works best with Raspbian Stretch. This video is about getting DOS and Windows 95 on the internet, so I don't think that using end-of-life software on the Pi is that big of an issue. I assume that my personal firewall, aka shitty unupdated Wi-Fi router, will take care of the security, so I won't spend any time setting passwords or spending a single thought on possible risks. Okay, let's get started. Alright guys, I've just plugged in the SD card from my Raspberry Pi into this USB 2.0 card reader and it looks like it's flashing. Yeah, I'm just using an off-the-shelf etcher, Berliner etcher, I don't know how it's pronounced, but it looks like it's working. Alright, it looks like etcher is done with etching. In most cases, you will take that card and plug it into the Pi and set everything up using a USB keyboard and an HDMI monitor. I am way too lazy for that and usually prefer to do a headless setup. RaspberryPi.org has a guide for that on its website. I'll just need to go into the boot partition of my SD card and create an empty file called SSH. This will open up the SSH port and will allow me to access the Pi's command line over my network. Because the Pi is supposed to use a wireless connection, I will also need to give it my Wi-Fi credentials. I'm just gonna create a new empty file called wpa-supplicant.conf and apply this template from here and do some customizations to it. As you might hear, I'm from Germany, so I will need to insert my country code in here, which is DE, and then my network credentials, which are, well, my network credentials. Well, and this is basically it. I'm just gonna save it, and we can now insert this SD card into the Pi and hook it up to a power supply. Okay, the Pi has been running for a few minutes, and if everything went according to my plan, I should now be able to SSH into the Pi. As you might see, my Wi-Fi subnet is 192.168.1.x, which means that it must have picked up an IP within that range. I will just use Nmap to scan my network. And there it is. I will try to SSH into the Pi using Raspbian's default credentials, which is basically just Raspberry as a password. And we are in. The very first thing I'm going to do is the regular apt-get update procedure. The script that I'm going to use depends on DNS mask, so right here. So let's just install that real quick. Okay, the next step will be quite painful for the security enthusiasts out there, but I will also install Telnet D. Trust me, this will become quite handy on that 486. After this is done, I'll just create a new shell file. And paste the stuff from GitHub into it. The script allows you to do some customizations, but I won't make use of that. I will just save it and give it the least restrictive permissions I could possibly think of. Normally, that scripts need to be run manually after each reboot. Luckily, Raspbian comes with a cheap rip-off of our good old autoexec batch file, which is called rclocal. I will just tell it to run the script automatically. Okay, we are ready to reboot and make some tests. Alright, this right here is my test setup. It's a ThinkPad with airplane mode turned on, which means that it doesn't get any kind of Wi-Fi connection on its own, but it has an internet connection because of the Raspberry Pi right here. And this Raspberry Pi gets its internet connection from my router right here. I've just noticed something. The guys who maintain the script I am using have updated this thing, Focus 4 days ago. That's what it says right here. and this newer version doesn't work, so I had to go into the history right here and pick an older version, which just works fine. Okay, the very next step now is getting this chunk of a 486 to become internet capable, which means like installing all of the 16-bit drivers and stuff. Okay, I have my MS-DOS CF card right here, and the very first thing that I'm going to do is create a new folder called mTCP, and I will take this zip file, extract it, and copy all of the executable files into this mTCP folder on that CF card. Okay, now I am going to copy over these two exe files, which are basically two setup executables for like Microsoft's network client. And then finally I'm going to create a new folder called 3com. And I will put this file into that folder. Okay, it looks like everything has been copied over and we are good to go. I've just connected the Ethernet cable of my 486 to the Pi, and finally I can get my filthy hands on that real MS-DOS command line. Before setting up mTCP and Microsoft's network client, I need to make sure that the card and the drivers are working. Let's go into the 3com directory and run this self-extracting executable with this weird file name. And I'll agree to this 30-year-old disclaimer without even reading it. There are things that are just never gonna change. This particular network card can be run in PNP mode. This would be totally fine on Windows 95, but becomes quite an obstacle in a 16-bit environment. There's a tool in here that allows us to turn that off. The packet driver for this card is located in the pkt dvr directory. In order to get that working, we will need to give it an unused software interrupt and the base I/O address of our card. We can find that out by running the main setup program, which allows us to run an autoconfig tool. Alright, it says that the base I/O of our card is 0x300, so let's get out of this tool and configure mTCP. I'm gonna create a configuration file that's quite simple. I'm gonna tell mTCP which software interrupt to use. And then give our machine a host name. Now let's get out of here and create a batch file. This will essentially start the driver with some required parameters, set some environment variables that mTCP is gonna need, and finally start mTCP's DHCP client in order to get an IP address from our Pi. Okay, now we can hit Ctrl-Alt-Delete. Alright, everything looks like it's working fine. Let's go into the mTCP directory and try to ping our Pi. Okay, the pinging was successful. Let me try to ping something out of my network. Even that's working fine. Alright. mTCP comes with a tool called htget. Isn't that great? We have this 26-year-old machine running a 27-year-old DOS, and we are able to receive HTML stuff on it. As you might remember, I've installed a Telnet server on the Pi, and mTCP comes with a Telnet client, which means I should be able to access the Pi's command line under MS-DOS 6.22. This becomes quite handy because I haven't set up the network drive stuff yet. So let's install Samba. Samba is basically a Linux tool that is able to mimic Microsoft-specific network shares. After this is done, I will create a new folder and give it 0 restrictions. Now I'm gonna edit Samba's main configuration file. And scroll down this huge file. Okay, we are now able to tell Samba to share this folder we have just created. Windows 95 and the MS-DOS network client aren't really compatible with modern and encrypted authentication mechanisms Samba comes with. So I won't even try and just allow anyone on the network to access this folder. I'm just gonna reboot the Pi and be right back on my main computer. Before installing the MS Network client and mounting that network drive, I want to put some things on it. This network drive can be used under every mainstream kind of Windows by default, and most mainstream Linux distributions, like the one I'm currently using, will also be capable of accessing it. I'll create a short text file in here. Hello, this is a test. Then I will take some of these setup executables and this random bitmap file from my desktop and copy the stuff over. Time to go to the DOS machine again. Just like the 3COM driver, the MS Network client also comes as a self-extracting executable. For some weird reason, it requires to be installed from 2 diskettes. Just like any cool person in 2021, I still have a bunch of diskettes lying around and will now extract the setup files onto these. Microsoft Corporate Network Systems. I'm quite curious if these numbers would still work. Do you know what would be cool? That would have been like a future predicting Easter egg if like one of these files would be called like sonic.exe and it would just say like inflating sonic.exe. um, Okay, I would say I'm gonna dive right in and try it out. I think it's called setup.exe. Username. I think I can just pick user as a username. Setup options. I think I'm gonna change them. Change startup options. I don't really want that to run automatically. And I think we are gonna need to change our network configuration. Okay, it has detected our network card, that's fine. But I don't think we are gonna need this IPX protocol. And just let's use TCP IP instead. Network configuration is correct. Okay, let's just gamble for it. OEM driver disk, I think that's the disk 2. Okay, let's go into the net directory. And I think we should have like some TCP IP applications in here. Okay, that looks like it's working. Let's try to ping something outside of our network. And this is also working. Can we like ping a particular address? And this is a weird thing I haven't resolved yet or like have taken care of yet, and I'm not even interested in doing that. It is unable to resolve like regular DNS host names. Okay, now the important part, and I think we should now be able to mount that particular network drive on the Raspberry Pi. I have forgotten the command. I'm just gonna look it up and try to type it in. The workstation, okay, let's start this. Type your username. Let's try this and just hit enter. Okay, let's go right in. And it's working. This is totally nice. But there's a weird thing. The file names that are that go beyond the 8.3 limit thingy MS-DOS has, the text, the name is completely like a garbled mess. But let's try to like display the text file I've just created. And this is working. It's I think it serves its purpose. But there's another thing you should be aware of if you are really trying to replicate this setup. So if I'm trying to start mTCP or start an mTCP application and try to go back into the into that network drive, it will just hang up the machine. This is also a thing I haven't resolved yet, and this is also a thing which makes me say, just screw it. Let's just dive right into the world of 32-bit computing and replicate the entire setup on Windows 95, which is like way more easier. Everything on this OS is just perfect, from the start sound to the overall usability. There's no need to mess around with batch files, and basically everything works just right out of the box. Let's go right into the settings. And add everything we are going to need for accessing our network drive, and then finally access the web. The network drivers usually require you to put in your OEM setup CD in order to install correctly. In my particular case, I already had them installed before I started recording this video, so they are already located on the local disk and they just need to be reactivated again. I think this should basically be it. Let's restart. Alright, it looks like everything has installed correctly. Let's run Win9x CFG. And it has gotten an IP from our Pi, that's good. Okay, let's mount the network drive. Let's use the host name. And we are in. Okay, let's install some stuff. As some of you might know, PuTTY is a Telnet and SSH client commonly used under Windows. Version 0.60 is the last Win9x compatible release known to me, and also comes with a huge amount of security vulnerabilities and exploits. Not that I would care though. After this shit is in, I will install the off-by-one browser. In comparison to Netscape Navigator, Internet Explorer or even Mosaic, this no-name project has a really low memory footprint and just requires round about 1 megabyte of that precious RAM in order to fully operate. Okay, let's try to do a Google search for a typical 2021 thing. Something that turned the world on its head and makes us wonder if things are ever gonna turn back to normal. Amogus. Alright, and it's even displaying like Google search results. Most of the sites usually require the browser to use HTTPS. Unfortunately, the SSL support of this particular browser is quite old, so most of the sites definitely won't work. Okay, let's do another search. Let's try to search for Mutahar laughing and try to view some images. Oh my god, it's displaying. Oh God, it's displaying the image. Okay, I have an idea. I'll just be right back real quick. I've just made an audio file using Uberduck.ai. Just take a listen.
Hello guys and gals, it's me Mutahar, and this is a 486. Back in the 90s, this thing was probably used for some serious business, and now it's just being used for dank memes.
I think we are basically done here. So I think it's like capable of displaying memes, and this is like the main aspect for me to have this machine, to be honest. Yeah. I just want to thank all of you guys who have made it through my video. If it was kind of entertaining for you, feel free to like, share and subscribe. I have a lot of similar hardware lying around and really tried to get another video made during the next few weeks. If you might have found that video to be disappointing in some way, I would also like you to give me some negative feedback. Bye for now.